everyone. I wanted to introduce you to our two speakers today. And first off, I will welcome a guest today, Marjorie Kaye. Welcome here. And then just to my left, we have the artist who is showing in the project space and member of Kingston Gallery, Diane Novetsky. Diane's work has been widely shown throughout New England, including the Art Complex Museum in Duxbury, Galatea Fine Arts, Danforth Museum of Art, Tufts University Edinburgh Gallery, Kingston Gallery, and the Boston Convention Center. She has been included in group exhibits at the Painting Center, New York, Mark Borghi Fine Arts, Sag Harbor, New York. She is also represented by the Kingston Gallery, Boston.
What I love about Diane, her approach to her work, is that she covets some academia and brings that to her palette, but there is also a point in which she breaks loose of any structure or rigidity that, is brought by the academia. So it's kind of a balance, it's a wonderful balance of energy. It's classical forms, alludes also to the female figure in some of these.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention the female form. That's definitely something that I have been interested in, and I use abstraction as a way of being suggestive. Curves come naturally to me. I'm really interested in using my body physically as I use the brush. I like to emphasize the curve of what I can get with my arm, my shoulder, my elbow. My work is definitely not wristy or fine-tuned in that way. I like to use a large brush and a large gestural form with my arm, and that naturally leads into the curves.
So it's a very physical process.
Yeah. I think it is multi-sensory, the act of painting, and I really relate it most closely to the enjoyment of music. There's many comparisons. I'm very broad in my appreciation of music, from classical to contemporary jazz. And I find that the improvisation of jazz is something that is very aligned with modern abstraction. Working intuitively, working as sort of a meditative process, coming up with symbols that can be repeated. The use of color can be descriptive of music. Color is descriptive of sound as well as visual. So I like that carryover of music. And you speak of the heat of color. A color is a very visceral element. It's a condition of many different things. And I like to really amp up that power of the visceral. I like to engage the viewer in a very powerful, strong communication process. I think my work has both sides of the brain in it. It's both controlled and structured, as well as intuitive and meditative. I try to balance both sides of the brain with that. I do begin with sketches, and my sketches are really, they're somewhere between doodles and a finished work of art, in that I do put a lot of myself into my drawings. I use colored pencil and use that medium to come up with my basic geometric layout, as well as the basic color palette. Many times that changes, and I don't hold, the drawing is usually 6 inches in height. So there's a big difference between what I do on paper and what I do on canvas. And that change in scale means I need to think or make changes as I'm working. I work with a water-based medium, acrylics on canvas. And so I have to work within both the strengths and the weaknesses of that medium. Acrylics are wonderful, vibrant colors. but they do dry naturally quite quickly. So I do add mediums to my palette in order to slow down the drying time. So that may give me, let's say, another 10 or 15 minutes, which isn't a lot, but it's enough to be able to be more flexible. And as an example of, we were talking about how I diverged from the initial sketch to the finished painting. In this painting, Night Bloom, the central area is something I couldn't have predicted because it is looser, it's more painterly, and it's something that I just came upon as I was dealing with the rest of the painting. I was following the sense of rhythm of the pink curves and of the teal, and arrived at something that was a little bit more painterly, looser than I usually do. So I couldn't have come up with that idea in my sketch. One thing that was overpowering in this one, or led me into this painting, was that I had these stretcher bars, which I reused from older paintings. And I felt that, I want to do something that starts out being a landscape, because that's where I emerged from, the idea of landscape. And at the same time, I wanted to use the icon of these circles, which I've become fascinated with, as sort of symbols of space, of interior space, as symbols of the cycle of life, I think, the kind of continuous round format. And so this became my venture into how would I interpret a landscape at this point in my life as I'm using these elements of circle and biomorphic forms in a new way. And how can I use the idea of the horizontal line? The all-important part of landscape is the horizontal, the earth and sky kind of thing. And yet it becomes very, very different when you overlay that with this large circle, which is kind of, when you think about it, kind of outrageous. I just see the resulting circle and two semicircles on either end as sort of this continuum of both relationships, of organic life, of form. I just see it symbolic in many different ways, ultimately. In this one, I really had been doing many canvases, both square and rectangular, using the circle. And it started with just this elliptical form and then emerged into a series of circles which are sort of pattern making. They have a vibration with each other, they overlap. So there's a lot going on between the relationships of these lines. The circles, in a way, become outlines, and that intrigued me also because I don't always use just pure line. I often use line as an edge or as an outline, but in this case, the circles really work as a line. And I think the pattern making of the overlap relates to some of these other squiggly line paintings that I've done earlier, where I'm trying to repeat forms, much as in music you hear repetition of certain chords to create something that blends, that has meaning.
I am looking at that print over there and how it relates to these paintings.
Prints are basically paintings on paper, and I wanted to try something new in the area of printmaking. For some reason, my mind told me, well, let's go into that new studio, New Impressions in Somerville, and let's try something you've always wanted to try, which is etching. And things worked out very well. I learned so many things in the process, and I was very lucky that I was successful in getting a series of prints that hold together, and prints that felt like me, that were in the same mind frame. They used the moon image, the circle, which I've used here, And they have a quality of tonality. By tonal, I mean that light, dark feeling that you get from using the etching process. So I think the contrast in technique and results made for an interesting lesson for me.
Yeah.
Before further ado, I'd like to thank you, Marjorie, so much for your
My pleasure.
wonderful questions.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you, Amy. And thank you for being here.